Hello and welcome to Beyond the Noise, the podcast series from PRWeek. I'm Evie Barrett, Deputy News Editor, and today I'm joined by some very special guests. You may know him as the nation's PE teacher. We've got fitness coach, author and social media star Joe Wicks. Joe's gained millions of online followers for his fitness videos and now runs his own fitness brand, The Body Coach. Also here in the studio today is Julia Bainbridge, partner at Freud's Group, who leads the Health and Behaviour Change Unit. Welcome both, great to have you here.
Thank you very much, lovely to see you.
I'm also joined by PRWeek UK's Deputy Editor, Siobhan Holt. Hi Siobhan.
Hi Evie.
And today we'll be discussing Joe's work on brand campaigns, including an impressive piece of work that the Body Coach recently launched with the UK government. We'll also come on to speak about Joe's recent killer protein bar stunt with Channel 4 and the impact of new unhealthy food regulations on PR campaigns. So, kicking things off, Joe, obviously in your capacity as an influencer, you've worked with brands including Lululemon, Asda, Aviva, Holland & Barrett. How selective are you with the brands that you work with and what criteria do you use to decide?
Well, you'll know from that list, it's quite a short list of names, isn't it? And if you think of, I've been around for 13 years now, started in 2012. So it's been a long journey through social media. And yeah, you can really count them on probably two hands how many companies and brands I've actually worked with. And that comes down to really a conscious decision to often say no to many things. Many amazing offers and partnerships and deals that were on the table, but didn't quite align with what I believed in. And I think some people say that on social media and some people really mean it and back it up. And there's been so many examples. One example I shared was with a supermarket in the UK wanted to do a partnership with me. And I was really excited about this because I was like, this is amazing. But when it really boiled down to, the actual fine details, it was basically ready meals. And, I was really pushing and promoting home cooking for so many years with all my cookbooks. And what I believe and stand for is that I really want families and children to cook more. So that partnership, I walked away from that and it was a really easy decision because even though the financial reward was amazing, for me, it was like so far from what I was trying to achieve that it just was a really simple, I'm not going to do that. And, we went away and had a really, really amazing partnership with Gusto, which is a meal delivery company, obviously giving you the ingredients. And I think it comes down to like genuine authenticity of like what I believe in and keeping it quite simple. Like my North Star is this, right? I want to get more people cooking at home and exercising. As long as and you'll see those brands, it is geared towards health and wellness and movement and cooking. So it's been a really sort of narrow focus and not getting distracted by all the noise with marketing and influencer marketing and stuff. So yeah, I'm proud of all the things I've said no to over the years because it's really kept my audience engaged and they trust me, and it's once you lose that, it's really hard to regain it.
And you're talking there basically about like collaboration. So what kind of dynamic do you prefer when you're working with a brand? Do you like to collaborate on the brief, or are you happy for them to steer you?
I suppose it really depends. A lot of the time we've had partnerships, it's normally come from either me or my brother Nicky, like sitting thinking, who would we love to work with? Like, what are we doing that's really resonating, and how could we, use another company or their audience to sort of amplify that mission of getting families and kids and everyone moving and cooking. And so, for example, the partnership with Lululemon was, Nicky reached out to someone on LinkedIn, was like, we really want to, have a partner in the athleisure wear sort of thing. And one coffee with them one day became like a 2-year partnership. And these were really organic things where we weren't told what to say, or the KPIs weren't like, more customers and more sales. It was much more about brand awareness and storytelling. And we did a really great series around sort of mental health and movement and mindfulness and all those things that are really important to me. It's just very subtly, powered by Lululemon. And so sometimes it can feel like really authentic content because I would do it anyway. I'm just doing it with a partnership with a brand. And I think when you do it in that way, it really, really works. And they were quite forward thinking. Like we did a really good thing with Louis Theroux, like where he came up to Wales and we did this sort of Walking with Joe series where we had conversations as we're walking through nature. So yeah, like when it's done like that, I think it's the most effective. I think if you get in bed with a company and they're telling you what to say and what to do, and it's like really kind of almost scripted, I feel like that's the least exciting partnerships for me. And which is why, you probably haven't seen me do those, because normally it's like, I'm doing something I'm really passionate about. How can you help me effectively like get that message out to more people?
Brilliant. And so are there any pitfalls then that you'd advise PR teams against, especially when working with a celebrity or an influencer on a campaign?
I think, it's just important to understand that when a creator has an audience, they know their audience really well. They've built that trust, they've built that community, and they really know how to like engage with them and sort of, how to communicate with them best. So if a creator has an idea about something and you're not too sure and you think you have a much different vision, like sometimes it's better to just trust them because they know what's going to do better. And for me, if I ever do a brand partnership, I want it to be successful for myself, but also for them as well, right? So if I know in my heart I'm about to post something which I know is going to tank and it's going to bomb and it's going to get zero engagement, that's not successful. So I'll always push back and say, look, I know this is your idea around what you want it to be, but if I just remove that or tweak this or, take away a little bit of that, I know more people are going to engage with it and share and comment and that's what you want, isn't it? It's not just about follower count. I think the engagement really comes from comments, shares, and people talking about it. And so I've not really made any massive mistakes in terms of like PR sort of like, fumbles and stuff where I've gone, oh, that really didn't work. Most of the things we've done have been really well received in my community online.
And do you think that is because you've been so specific?
Yeah, I think it's just knowing instinctively what's going to work. And even when it comes down to like promoting books or promoting, my fitness app, I'm really good at content marketing. I don't know how, but I somehow learned how to engage with people and also like inspire and motivate them. And at the same time, you can sell a product, but sometimes it's done in a really authentic, genuine way. Like it's about emotion, it's about connection. And so because I'm selling health and fitness, you're not just going to see like an ad for me and go and buy it straight away. It might take a few months or even years for you to say, like, I really love what Joe's saying. I really believe in what he's doing. And so I understand that arc of like turning a follower into a customer. It's not instant. It can take months and often years. And so I'm always thinking longer term, you know what I mean? And I really believe in the power of giving out free content and really engaging people long before you take brand money and partnerships. You capture attention and you just sell it straight away, right? I know I've seen so many people do that where they have a really huge audience, really engaged, and suddenly they're bombarding them with ads and different promotions, and then suddenly their audience just switches off and they never get it back. It's really hard. You've got to protect that, I think.
Really good advice. Listen to the people around you. On the topic of influencer marketing, this isn't actually the first time you've spoken to PRWeek, so we're having a chat beforehand. In 2017, you actually sat down for an interview with our UK editor, John. At the time, you said you predicted that influencer marketing could become saturated. I believe the quote was, eventually it will become unsuccessful, there'll be no return on investment, they'll be pumping millions of pounds into influencer marketing and won't be getting the return, so it might just fizzle out a bit. Have we reached that point yet? Where do you think we're at?
I don't think that's aged very well, is it, in this environment? Because I think, that's funny because I would have been only 4 or 5 years into my journey as like a body coach, and obviously with my book deals and all that, and thinking I probably knew it all. But ultimately, I think back then it was a much easier thing. When you had audiences, you could communicate directly with them, right, really easily. You posted something, they saw it. Now, obviously, I think it's become much harder to get your content seen to your audience organically. But, I think there's more influencers than ever because anyone really, with an audience and an affiliate code can become an influencer and set up businesses, which I think is great. I do think it's become more challenging to stand out, to grow on social media has become really hard. And yeah, I do find sometimes when you do those paid partnership posts, unfortunately, the algorithm doesn't want that to be seen unless you're going to be willing to pay Meta to boost that content. So I think it can still be very effective. It's growing. I think, we know there's more people on social media than there ever has before, and screen time's higher than ever. It is where the attention is. So yeah, I don't think we've reached that point, but I think it's just become harder to successfully organically reach your audience. And so you are having to pay and boost your content a lot more than you did have to, like in 2017. It was really easy back then. So yeah, it's still worth doing, but I think it's about nowadays, it's not just using one massive celebrity influencer. I think it's sometimes more effective to use smaller micro influencers that can cover the whole range of audiences, and which is what you see brands doing, I think, now.
Yeah, that community.
Yeah, because you can have a really engaged audience, with 5,000 people as opposed to 500,000 people that, aren't really truly engaging or even consuming your content anymore. So I think depth of engagement is way more valuable, even more so now than ever. And also personality-driven brands and truly authentic people, the ones that are succeeding in that space, I think.
Okay, so this year, The Body Coach launched its Activate campaign. Could you explain the idea behind it, the journey you went on, and why was it groundbreaking?
Yeah, so Activate is like my proudest achievement at the moment because I've been doing so much work with schools. I've visited hundreds of schools over the years and I really enjoy it, but it isn't scalable. I can't visit every primary school in the UK. So this idea, this vision of like creating an animation of me, doing like the workouts and really visual and stimulating and engaging. So we had this idea and we went to an agency in London called Studio AK who produce Hey Dougie. And we're like, look, we really want to do this. Can we come together? So we sort of went together like a joint venture to create the first episodes. And yeah, it's been like such an amazing thing to see the feedback, and the campaign is really about getting kids moving and giving parents, teachers resources, because it is using a screen. Of course, it's using, YouTube and it's using CBeebies now, but it's about proper active screen time, and rather than be passive, like really, you just put this on and the kids get up, they start exercising and it's really impactful. So yeah, it's been amazing to see. And obviously our vision is to build that into something even bigger, reach more people and get more kids using it.
Absolutely. Evie and I did put it on actually before we came into the studio. So you nearly got us working out at the desk there, Joe.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. Sorry, what do you think of the curly hair and the little moustache and everything?
Yeah.
With the hair.
Yeah,
The hair.
it's great.
Very
really
impressed.
works.
Yeah, it looks spitting image. So obviously, Julia, Freud's played a big role in this campaign. How did you guys work together?
So Nikki, Joe's brother, and I, Nikki's CEO of the Body Coach, we'd met a couple of years ago and struck up a bit of a rapport talking about how Joe in principle might be comfortable working with the UK government or not, and how that could pan out. And we met a few times for coffee, and as soon as he told me the story of Activate, as Joe's just explained, the kind of the backstory and the penny dropping of Joe kind of going, I'm not getting any younger, I can't visit every school in the country, I can't possibly kind of reach every child, so therefore I need to do something that will actually give me more of an extension and reach these children. I found that backstory really compelling, and then he showed me the prototype, or a really draft version of Activate, and I instantly just thought, hang on, this is really quite mega, it's going to be beautifully done, the power of Joe, and what it's trying to achieve. And I've worked with the government and the health system for a long time now, over a decade, and I sort of knew that they would probably be able to see what I could see, which is this wonderful partnership and opportunity to work with content that was clearly going to be amazingly engaging for children. And so that's really, Joe and Nikki trusted me to broker that relationship, and then obviously I've got the various connections with people across Whitehall, and was able to just make sure that the right people were aware of the potential opportunity, and then it all kind of went from there. But I think it was particularly innovative and brave, I must say, of the government to kind of want to invest in content that wasn't their own. That's what made it so different, this particular piece, whereas it's not a commission. Joe had already made a number of episodes, and then the government was willing to invest in creating more, and that has never been done before. So that's what made it quite bold on their part, in a really good way.
And Joe, what was it that made you want to kind of bring Freud's on board to help with this?
Well, I was just saying before we started this conversation that the views have been incredible, but it really was down to an amazing launch. The PR was unbelievable. I've never had so much coverage other than PE with Joe during lockdown. It was unbelievable. The reception, obviously having Wes Streeting come on TV with me and really back it and truly support the creation of the next episodes meant that we could get more content out quicker. And I just don't think we would have had those views. 2.6 million views is amazing, and up to, was it 60,000 hours of exercise?
Just during the campaign period, yeah.
Just in that short couple of weeks. And so it was fundamental and instrumental to their success. It's just giving it the best possible chance, because when you create these things, it's really hard getting it in front of people. But we had national press, radio, TV, loads of interviews with loads of publications, and so it just gave it the perfect launch. And now the challenge is, how do we sustain that? How do you still get people talking about it and create that buzz? But it was really just validating to know that the government were going to get behind it, that they were willing to back it, because it took a long time from inception to creation, and not being able to get any funding for them to say, look, we really love what you've done, Joe, it's really awesome, and it can really help our goals of getting more people moving, getting kids more active. So it was the perfect relationship, and it was just the best thing to see how many people got to see it in those first few weeks. And now we're trying to just again keep people talking about it, get more parents and schools, because I really believe it's an amazing thing that every school should be using every day. The way it's designed, it's 5 minutes, it's really accessible, you could do it in a tiny little space. So yeah, we're really thinking about ways to continue that message around PR, advertisement, keep it going and stuff.
Julie, you were saying there, talk about how you gain the government backing. Could you expand a bit more on that, and also the impact it's had, especially across the different departments? Because that's a lot of departments. You've got Department of Health and Social Care and Education, DCMS as well. Yeah. It's quite a lot. So how have you managed that?
Yeah, well, we're obviously a government rostered agency. So that's, as I said, we've worked with the Department of Health and Social Care since 2008, actually. Freud's has worked with the department, and the NHS is a client as well. So we were able to sort of start with the centre. Obviously, we knew that the work and the opportunity could straddle multiple departments and multiple policy areas, but we started by having a conversation with Number 10 and Cabinet Office, and then took some of our other departments along the journey. We just started with what an amazing opportunity it was, particularly because childhood obesity, and I know Joe doesn't like to dwell on childhood obesity necessarily, but that is obviously at the heart of the government's priorities, and particularly the prevention agenda. So I knew from a policy perspective it was in the right place, and then also from a communications perspective it was something that was ready-made and with Joe alongside it. So for loads of reasons I knew that the opportunity stacked up in terms of what looked like win-win-win space, winnable from a public health point of view, winnable from a government reputation point of view, and winnable for Joe and what Joe was trying to achieve, which is kind of the perfect way of finding a solution for everybody, and something that at Freud's we really pride ourselves on, in finding that kind of winnable space.
we were up against it when we were timing wise, because we're trying to get it out before summer holidays, so that the kids could hear about it and schools could share it, and then obviously get kids moving through the summer holidays. And it was just like the perfect time. But there's a lot of pressure and a lot of back and forth to get the messaging right, and because you've got two people's views and opinions, and you've got to come together. And Freud's were just amazing at like really making us feel like we were comfortable with the messaging, and obviously dealing with the government and their side of it from an optics perspective. Because we were taking money off the government. I wanted people to understand the reason behind that and why this was the perfect partner, really, because actually they're trying to achieve what we're also trying to achieve, which is get kids active and moving. And so it felt like a really lovely synergy, and there was no negative backlash. It was all positive. The media really responded to it. Social media were wonderful, and so I think, it was just really good timing that because if we'd missed that window by a few months, this whole thing maybe wouldn't have existed, and we certainly would have had 2.6 million views. Like, it was the perfect storm of really good PR, perfectly timed at the right time of year.
And how did you manage to kind of navigate that balance between obviously having a commercial brand and wanting to sort of meet the government's policy requirements? Because I think sometimes public sector campaigns can struggle to kind of resonate with audiences, be seen as cool, but at the same time, private influencer campaigns might lack that credibility. So how did you kind of strike a middle ground?
Well, I think because we already the content was already like we'd already created the content. It wasn't like we were being directed or told what to create. It was like, we've got this out there for the world. We just need your help to like amplify it, essentially. It felt like for me, if I'd released this and gone straight with like a partner, let's just say it was like a supermarket and there was like a transaction, but the money that came in was literally to develop more content. So it felt like I had no issue with it. Although it'd be wonderful to one day monetize Activate, it's not the initial goal. It's not the ambition right now. It's really about getting as many episodes made because it's expensive doing this animation. And, we really wanted to have an amazing catalogue of workouts, get it on YouTube, and it's not behind a paywall. And obviously, even now with it being acquired by BBC, CBeebies, it's like, we're so happy it's completely free. Anyone can access it. So that was really important to us, that we weren't going to put it behind a paywall and it be like limited to certain people. I do believe that fitness and exercise should be accessible to everybody. It was just the perfect synergy. It didn't feel like a push and pull. It was just like,
there wasn't as much trade-off as you might think, because for all the similar reasons, everyone was actually really trying to achieve the same thing. As Joe said, because the content was already made, it was really then about, okay, well, what does the surrounding package look like? We had already known that it really fit with the NHS 10-year plan. So actually everyone was on the right page at the right time.
So we had a budget, obviously, for the creation of the new episodes, and then there was the media spend, wasn't there, which obviously helped really, really amplify it. But do you want to talk about that a little bit? How did you manage to like negotiate and say that this is for the episodes, but we also need to invest in boosting it and getting out there a little bit?
Well, I think the key thing from a government point of view, from our point of view, actually, generating coverage is just a means to an end. Ultimately, what you really need and to deliver success is the actual behaviour change. So the hours of activity, but in the right groups. So what Joe's talking about is one of the kind of conditions, if you like, of the deal is that we were able to geo-target the content to children who needed it most in the most deprived communities. And we were going to be judged on the hours completed within those groups. So the media spend in order to do that gave us control. And then we were able to kind of deliver on a digital strategy that would make sure that we had got the right eyeballs from the right children and their parents in the right places. That was what was really paramount and of utmost importance to the government as a client.
Super interesting.
We're so fortunate. Not only are you a great agency, but you had that partnership with the government. Like, they trust you, so like you're not just bringing them some random thing that you've got that you've delivered such great projects over the years that it was like we're lucky we just landed and met you, really, because if it were another agency, we would have got PR, but you wouldn't have had that government backing and that like seal of approval from like the NHS and Department of Education. Like, it was proper like authority saying, we really think this is great, you should let your kids see this. Kind of like what happened with lockdown, like people were like, this is your PE teacher going to do the workout. It was really just like the perfect kind of combination of content and everyone also needing that right now. People really need to get their kids moving, they're struggling with it, so it's like it just filled that gap, and it's just a really wonderful, wholesome like thing to get behind.
There's a few other partners that are involved, including Universal Music, which is worth kind of crediting, but a lot of people talk about their relationship to Activate being quite serendipitous, because Nikki and I were actually having a conversation about something completely different when he kind of did a Columbo moment of just like, and another thing, and then kind of showed me. So it's quite funny how we all then ended up working on this thing that we're all so proud of.
And do you think it's the authenticity of that kind of partnership that's really driven the media coverage? Because obviously in a news cycle that's so dominated by negative news and politics and economics and things, it can sometimes be hard to sort of carve out space for a positive health story. So how did you manage that, and what was the narrative arc that you used for that?
So interestingly, many journalists that I speak to are really looking for a positive news story because they actually do want some hopeful stuff to say. It feels like it's not always the case. I mean, one thing I will say is that I wouldn't want to take away from the content itself. The content and Joe really is the story. It's just the fact that the timing was so crucial. And by that, I mean, the timing sort of was the narrative arc, if you like. We had to launch it ahead of summer holidays, as Joe mentioned, because from a behavioural perspective, that's when we know children are most sedentary. So we had to do it then because it had to fill the void that we knew parents and children would be hankering for over the summer holidays. But that also then kind of gave media the reason, because it's why this, why now, and who. And you've got all of those component parts kind of already ready-made. But it really is about just how brilliant the content is itself, I think, which drove most of the engagement.
I was really surprised though by the amount of coverage it had, because obviously when you do these things, you never know what's going to happen, and like you think you might get a couple of local interviews, but it was like regional radio all across the UK. You had, you know, we did This Morning with Wes Street and came on, and like that again led to so many articles. It was just, and you know your weekly updates. It was like this long email just kept getting longer and longer of like things to confirm, things done, things in the sort of in the pipe, and it was like just this never-ending email that just went on for pages and pages. So again, it was just like, it was different, it was quirky. Visually, it had the animation, you had the, you know, the assets of sort of showing what it looked like. So it was quite good to talk about as well. And then obviously lots of digital publications also talked about it, and they could have links to YouTube, which is quite good. They could sort of drive people straight through to it. So I imagine that also drove a lot of the views out as beyond just the paid media. But yeah, it's just like amazing to see it, you know, and I was just so like, this is such an amazing launch. It couldn't have gone any better, really.
Actually, it's true about YouTube, because they did a kind of a homepage takeover. Do you remember, kind of halfway through, and the views doubled in number on, I think, on one day with thanks to their support. So that was brilliant too.
And you mentioned there, you know, that it's part of the tackling the 10-year health plan. So I was wondering, what are your longer term KPIs with it, and what are the hopes and the ambitions then going forward?
My vision for Activate is global. I want, you know, I'd love to see it on every platform in the world for kids all across the world. And, you know, with like amazing AI, you can translate pretty easy into other languages. So, you know, you can see it in Spanish and Hindu and, you know, all different languages around the world. But right now it's just about how do we get people in the UK. And I really would love, you know, and I said this to West Street, and I would love this to be a compulsory part of a school day. We know children doing less exercise than ever. And we know that young kids are struggling with their mental health and their focus, their attention, their behaviour. And I believe that a 5-minute workout can transform a child's health and also their day, you know. So I'd love to have more conversations with them to say, how can we really not just put a bit of money behind it and let's do a little bit of PR one day? How can we really implement this into the school day and into the curriculum? Like, because I think there's nothing sadder than thinking about kids being unhappy and, you know, lethargic or stressed and overwhelmed and overworked and stuff. So it's like, if we can just think about how do we slot that into the day, and it's very easy. They've all got smart screens in their classrooms anyway. You know, get 5 minutes in the morning and maybe 5 minutes just before the end of the day, before they head home. Like, think about that 10 minutes a day, what that could do for those children. So that's kind of where my head's. I really wish it was like compulsory, just like maths and sciences. Why not really prioritise health and wellness in school? Because when you've got parents at home that are struggling, or they're both working, or they've got their own mental health issues, it's very hard for them putting all in them and saying, you got to get kids moving. Whereas the school day is a great environment for kids to be active because their friends are there as well. They can do it together. And you're not asking for like lots of space, lots of time and lots of money. They can do it in their school uniform, in their classrooms, or like, you know, in a little break area. And it's really, really fun. And the music, the visuals, the cartoon, the animation, it's so fun that every child would love it. And I've seen it in action. It really lights them all up, and they all just have a much better day. So that's kind of my vision for it. And
some schools are starting to do that themselves, aren't they? We receive loads of incoming kind of like photos and videos of classrooms doing it, and the reactions from the children afterwards. So you always ask them, don't you, how do you feel now? And they're always like, amazing.
Yeah, that was nice getting the user generated content, because the first few weeks it went live, it just tagging every day was people tagging. But I'm still surprised when I meet teachers in school. I've been to a few schools, and we do all your YouTube workouts. And I'm like, do you like the animation ones? And it's like they still haven't seen the animation ones, even when they're going onto my YouTube channel, but they're finding the ones of me, you know, in the classroom with the teddy bears and things, or they know I've got workouts, but they don't, there's still that disconnect. So it's like there's still a big gap of people. They know of me in the YouTube channel, but don't know about the animation. So how do we close that gap? And I think it will be, you know, more PR and more kind of work within schools to get them to sort of try it out. Because once they do, they will say like, we did one and the kids screamed, can we do another one and do it again? And that it really, really is effective at doing that, because kids just like the visual element of it, and just the fact there's music. It's really fun. It's like energetic, and that's my vision, that it becomes a global. You know, I want it to be like Bluey or Hey Dougie, like internationally, globally known as this amazing, this amazing thing that people really warm to. And it's not just about sitting there in front of a screen. Like, yeah, we're always going to have that passive screen time, but how can we disrupt that and use the technology and get them up? So they put the iPad on the floor or over on the table and they just do the exercise. And I think that's kind of the end goal, really. I just always think about that.
Moving on. So, Joe, you made headlines recently with your killer protein bar stunt. Did it have the impact you were hoping for? And do you have plans to take that idea any further?
So the documentary was called Joe Wicks, License to Kill. Sound like a James Bond movie.
Did you pitch that, Joe?
It was the one they wanted. Channel 4 wanted a much more provocative title.
Really?
Like, I'm not having that. But it was a provocative thing. It was a campaign. It's about essentially the ultra processed food system, the labelling, the sort of the dishonesty, if you like, around that. And it was about putting pressure on the government to put health warnings on these foods. And the message alone is quite difficult to understand. Like that the ingredients in these foods are harmful, and that they are linked to an increased risk of cancers and dementias and strokes and things. Like, no one wants to hear that. And so the backlash, was a huge backlash. In the week leading up to it, like when I announced the bar to the documentary airing, I got absolutely attacked, didn't I, by the health and fitness community and nutritionists and doctors, and a lot of them, were funded by the kind of food companies that I'm talking about. But I had to ride that storm out and know that actually when the documentary aired, there's a bigger context. It's not just about protein bars. But yeah, like it was upsetting because I'm not used to having that negative energy and that criticism. But when it aired, I had so many wonderful messages. People really understood what I'm trying to do. And I know in my heart, you can sit there and say, oh, you're just, you're promoting like eating disorders and you're demonizing foods. But I know in my heart, I'm trying to help you eat better and cook more and, remove these ultra processed foods from diet. So because I know that I can weather that storm. But it wasn't fun. It wasn't nice because it was provocative in the sense that I created a bar that I actually physically sold, to show that actually on one side it was like really honest, like this may increase the risk of heart disease, stroke, and cancers, and on the other side it was like, but there's added protein and 26 vitamins and minerals, and it was like all these health claims. So it's just to highlight that these foods can be marketed as really healthy products, but actually they're not real foods and it's not that great for you. So that was the kind of stunt, if you like. But I can honestly say like it done what it needed to do, because if I'd done a boring documentary saying why ultra processed foods are harming us, no one would have tuned in. But when you have something around that, like that proper like hook, which was like, what is he doing? He's selling a bar, like, and people were sort of triggered by that. It really drove the awareness, and people actually talked about it and stuff, which I wanted to do. I wanted people to actually tune in and hear the message, because we need to talk about our food and the way we're eating.
Yeah, I mean, it was successful in that it got attention to get the message across that you wanted in the end. I mean, it kind of ties in with, obviously, there are some new HFSS regulations which are kind of tightening the definition of healthy. Has that really changed kind of which brands you would work with and how you sort of vet partners to ensure that you aren't accidentally promoting sort of compliant but ultimately unhealthy products?
Yeah, like I said, I've not done much in the food space. I've only really worked with Gusto. And I know in my heart, and I see this around, like loads of influencers and people in fitness making millions of pounds from selling, whether it's supplements or shakes or powders or gummies or creatine, this, and it's like, I don't want to be involved in that because I just don't use those products. And I know I could have an amazing brand in that sort of space, but I've always just focused on cooking and fitness. And so I don't really have those conversations with many companies. I'm not having lots of conversations, but, if I'm genuinely a fan of a product and I'm using it and there's a conversation, like it feels really natural, I'll have conversations. But like you said, you've just got to be careful, because what may look healthy on the outside, underneath it may not be as healthy as you think. And so it's just about like really looking into the products. And I suppose as a consumer now, I'm definitely reading the back of products like I never used to. I just eat my wraps, eat all this, eat my your jams and marmalades and ketchups and all these sauces. But now I just look and think, is there a healthier option that I can get? And normally there is. Might cost a few quid more, but I am more aware of like the actual ingredients going into the foods now.
Absolutely.
So we're seeing a massive shift, as you're saying there, where health claims are being scrutinised more than ever by, ASA, for example. Julia, what kind of impact then do you see the HFSS regulation as having on PR campaigns in general? And are they a barrier or a benefit in your view?
I don't really see them having a huge amount of bearing. Well, I mean, certainly in the space that I operate in, not a huge amount of bearing. I mean, from a public health point of view, I would suggest that it should go a bit further. I mean, the fact that the 9 p.m. watershed has only just come in, I think we need to do a lot more to protect children's health more broadly, minimise exposure to unhealthy marketing wherever we can. And some of this regulation is starting to go in the right direction. I think some of the work that Joe and Chris Van Tolliken have done around food labelling, I think is also going in the right direction. I think one thing in a broader marketing sense, I think it would be helpful if people understood the spectrum of processed food, and that not all ultra processed food is created equal, if you like. There is a little bit of an understanding job to be done there, but ultimately, as Joe says, the more people that can cook from scratch and the more people that understand food labelling, I think that's the most important. And I also think it's right that we are scrutinising spurious claims and some of those influencers that, as Joe said, are kind of like marketing various products and then people don't know what's in them. I mean, actually, I think those products that masquerade as healthy, which is what Joe was spotlighting, and are really actually anything but. I mean, I think there could be a lot of work done to sort of expose those even further than Joe and Chris have done.
I feel a cooking campaign coming on, Joe. I'm just saying that in schools.
Another one.
In schools.
Yeah, I'm still obviously, I'm just, my new book's out in a couple of days, but I'm always trying to get people cooking, because we're living in a world now where, like, it's just becoming a dying art and people aren't as interested, and especially younger people. So I'm doing a lot of, work in school around exercise, but I do think the next element of that would be to try and promote somehow, like, getting cooking back on the agenda, or even at home. Like, I try and lead by example. I get my kids in the kitchen and I show that you can actually get your children learning to cook at home. It's just a bit stressful.
I've actually got a wooden cookery set for my son, who's only 2. So he's actually got like a knife that is wooden so that he can chop the tomatoes. And I do think food provenance and understanding what you're eating, where it's coming, it makes such a difference, because they feel invested in what they've created.
100%.
I mean, it would be great to hear some more about how the BBC acquired Activate and what you hope to get out of that relationship going forwards.
Yeah, when I found out the BBC were like going to acquire Activate, I was so happy, because obviously, like, having young children who watch CBeebies, and obviously being a kid who like grew up with that, like, it's just amazing to see it actually on there itself, because we launched it originally on YouTube as like to see, hopefully just get out there to the whole world and have global reach. But as a UK platform, like, there's no one more trusted than the BBC. So they essentially acquired the first season of episodes, and now we're at a point now we're hoping that, fingers crossed, they want to commission like a new series. So yeah, nothing confirmed on that yet, but they just loved it. They loved it from the start, and they said, we really would love to show this on CBeebies, and the response has been great. I don't know the exact numbers on views and everything, but I know they're really happy with it so far. And yeah, like, to see it obviously on YouTube on a weekend, and then on CBeebies and on Saturday morning, like, people were just like tagging me in their stories. Kids got it on the big screen. It's sort of made it more official, and almost like it's given it a bit of an authority, because it is a huge brand and a trusted, loyal brand where people might not necessarily want to have their kids on screen time on YouTube, but they're really happy to put CBeebies on. So again, it's opened up probably a new audience, and again, it's amplified it. So yeah, I'm really, really chuffed that it's on there.
Brilliant.
Well, unfortunately, that's all we've got time for today, but it's been so great to hear insights from you both. Thanks so much for joining us, Joe and Julia, and to Siobhan, of course. Thanks to you too for listening, and until next time, goodbye.